Guys, Roland here. We have an amazing conversation planned for you. We will be discussing the new moon taking place on July 10th. And with me is an amazing guest you're already familiar with that you will get to meet right after this. Welcome to Conversations with Roland, where the goal of this show is to learn life secrets through diverse experiences. I am your host, Roland Achenjang. Guys, welcome to Conversations with Roland. As always, I am super excited to record these conversations, and today is no different. Today, we will be talking about the July 10th new moon, and with me is an amazing guest, Wendy Reitz, that you're already familiar with, who will be telling us what to expect with this new moon. And it's my absolute pleasure to welcome again Wendy Reitz to Conversations with Roland. Wendy, how are you?
I'm great, Roland. How are you doing? It's great to be here, and thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. I should thank you too, absolutely, because I realize this is a huge time commitment. It's something we started as a passion project, and it's not stopped. It's like we're rolling down the mountain, an avalanche that started as a small snowball, and it's not stopping. So
yes,
yeah, my
I totally
pleasure.
agree. Yeah, I totally agree, and it's so much fun. Like we're looking forward to getting together and sharing our experiences and everything.
Essentially, and it's a great opportunity to learn a lot of the ways we're all connected with celestial bodies, celestial spaces, and to me I find it fascinating, and thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge about these topics with us. So it's great.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Just a couple of housekeeping items for anyone who's been listening to or watching our podcast conversations. This episode is unique and different because we're recording it way ahead of time, and I'll let you kind of explain why that is. And we're also releasing it early. And so if you don't mind sharing why.
Yeah. So I have had several requests that people would like to listen to this not on the day of the new moon or the full moon, that they would like to listen to it a couple days ahead of time so that they kind of sync with it. And so when the new moon happens, then they already have it in their awareness, and it's already very present for them. And so then they can, a lot of people like to do celebrations or make the day a holiday, or so then they can actually prepare, and when they're doing their yoga or doing meditation, they have that information ahead of time.
Makes sense. It's good to prepare. And what I like about this is we are listening to our listeners.
Yes.
That's awesome. So let's get right into it. We are getting ready for this new moon. That means the last moon cycle is ending. And so we just need to set the stage for this new moon that's coming up. Some of the things that I know is we are transitioning, or we have already transitioned into the summer season, which I think that's fascinating. And it would be nice for you to kind of recap what this transition from spring to summer season with regards to the moon cycle means for us.
Okay. Let's start with just talking about the year. And in the year, we have the winter solstice, spring equinox, summer solstice, and fall equinox. And so far this year, we've gone through the first half. And that summer solstice that happened a few weeks ago is that very definitive midpoint of the year. And the impulse that we have the first half of the year is a little different than the second half of the year. So we just went through the creative impulse, and the summer solstice is the height of that creative impulse. And The creative impulse is outward expansion energy. So it involves like discovery and adventure. We're a lot more active, our mind is a lot more active, and we're building experience, because experience is really how we learn, it's how we evolve. And so we just went through that whole outward energy. And when we get to the summer solstice, we start the receptive impulse. And so we're taking the first few little baby steps into that receptive impulse. And the receptive impulse takes all that creative, experiential building, and it starts to bring it into a productive form. So it's a more refining impulse. So we have more tendencies of slowing down, and we're a little more introspective, and we can feel everything just kind of slow. It's not as though you put the brakes on, it's as if you let off the gas pedal, and you're just going to start coasting all the way through this beautiful receptive impulse till we get back to the winter solstice. So that's a bigger picture.
I see. I like the way you explained that, Wendy. I mean, I really do. And it's making me think of the mini moon cycles that we have and that we talk about frequently, including this one that we are discussing, which starts, later this month, July 10th or so. But essentially, the receptive period, what you're saying is, and I'll use the same word, it's a refinement. That's where you're becoming, I would say, more of an expert in creating what you have been shown or become aware of during the first half of the overarching moon cycle, during that whole creative part, right up until the summer solstice. And so now you're integrating the information, and you're making it, I should say, it's now making more sense to you. And maybe, can I use the word a little bit more of an expert in what you're creating, because you understand it a little more?
I'm not sure expert. How about if I use a very practical example of my professional experience? I was an industrial designer, and so I was a creative professional. And when you start a project, you do a lot of brainstorming. So I would fill pages of sketches of whatever I was designing. And I would just go, and just let my mind go free, and just let it get out of the box and be totally organic and creative. So I would have pages and pages of sketches. So then what would happen I would realize, wow, okay, I think I've taken this to the extent I can. And so what I would do then, I would do the refinement aspect of it, where I'd go through my sketches and I'd look at them and say, wow, that's a really cool aspect. Wow, this is really cool too. Okay, I really like that. So then I would start to sketch the product, incorporating all those really cool things all into one thing. And it would become a refined single thing instead of all those amazing ideas. So then what would happen is I would bring it down into this beautiful single kind of creation. And then you could really understand it. You could really understand it. So that's what we're really doing with those two impulses. You can think of it as brainstorming with activity and experience. Okay? We're just like, and having fun and doing all that. And then what happens in the receptive impulse, the first quadrant, this summer season is all about play. So what play does is it has to do with relationships. So you're taking all that building you did with experience that's kind of out of control, and when you start to play with other people, that is a very big refining experience or process, because the other person is reflecting back to you certain things. So it's like, if you take that analogy of me doing my brainstorming with sketches, when I get into the play period, they're reflecting back to me which one of those sketches is most important. So they're reflecting back to me which one of my experiences are most important for this year. So you start to play. That's what's happening in play.
I
That's
see.
what
Oh,
starts to refine it. Does that make
yeah.
sense? Did I
It
get that?
does.
Okay.
That's a great example, right? Using the brainstorm analogy, using your personal experience as an architect. That's great.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. So this July 10th moon cycle now is the beginning, or not the beginning, is the first moon cycle in this play environment,
Hmm.
right?
So
And it's
what I like to
influenced
say, yeah, what I like to say, Roland, it's so much easier if you say this is the first new moon
the
in this
first new moon.
season.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
because if you
Yep.
if you really look at new moons, then it becomes easier where they're placed within the season.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thanks for that correction. The first new moon
Yeah.
in this summer season. There we go. And
Yeah.
so, tell us about what this new moon's overarching messages or overarching awarenesses that we need to know and what's influencing it.
Okay. So we just talked about this refining impulse that's starting. And this first new moon in the summer season has all those characteristics to get us to take that first step with refinement. So the influence is the moon. And the moon is all about reflection and awareness. And it's also about rhythm and pattern and regeneration. And so as we move through this moon cycle, those are the things that are going to become more, we're going to become more aware of. We're going to become more aware of like the moon cycle in general, how that's regenerative, where it just keeps, we're repeating this cycle over and over again. So in our life, there's so many patterns like that, so many cyclical patterns where we have a day that's 24 hours and we have the year that goes around and keeps. So consciousness in itself is very cyclical, and it's cyclical on dimensions. And so when we get to this moon cycle, that's really what it's all about, is to bring our awareness to that more regenerative aspect of consciousness and how that works. So one of the main things with the moon is very much associated with our personality. It's this kind of the structure, how it does that. And in that is emotions. So the moon is very tied to emotional patterns. And when we go through every moon cycle, there's a empowering time that we have, and there's also a challenging time. So when you start to understand moon cycles and you start to know when your empowering time and when your challenging time is, you can start to see how you have a rhythm of emotions that are happening all the time. And in this moon cycle, we learn how feelings and emotions, the relationship between them, because we usually have a feeling that is expressed as an emotion. And so those are very, very interconnected, interdependent. And so in this moon cycle, we have the opportunity or the learning potential to experience emotions, but also learn where they're coming from, how they're expressed, and where the source of that expression is. Because emotions are expression, but there's this really underlying feeling aspect of where they come from.
Wow. Okay. And you've said so much there. One of the cool things about
Mm-hmm.
this moon cycle really is just that its influence is the moon. So it's like, and you
Mm-hmm.
call it the moon's trust, the new moon. And I find that
Yes,
fascinating.
yes.
I am also familiar with the fact that the moon is usually associated with emotion. And I like that you brought that up, that during this next 4 weeks, beginning with the new moon on July 10th, that's the awareness that we should seek to understand the rhythmic nature of our emotions and nature and feelings, and what the source of those emotions are. And I'll ask you this, Wendy, why do you think it's necessary to understand the rhythmic nature of our emotions and the source of them, essentially the feelings that generate the opportunity for us to express those emotions?
Okay, there's several reasons. And we can talk about trust because feelings are our truth. And a lot of times we don't trust our truth. We might feel a certain way, but just kind of override it and do what our mind or intellect wants to do, or ego. Okay? So if you live according to your feelings, then you're living a very authentic life. And so there's such a huge process of, transitioning to that, where you really live by your feelings, you trust that as your truth and guidance, and you act upon it. So that's where the
Yeah,
moon's trust comes in. That's what the
comes
moon's
into play.
trust is. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
that's no easy feat to trust your feelings, because we live in a society that's backed by data and science, and it's not
yeah.
feeling.
Uh-huh. So there's a difference
Yeah.
between like logical pattern and organic pattern. And so we're very much conditioned according to logic or deductive reasoning pattern that's scientific. And when you start to live by feeling, it's a more organic pattern. And it doesn't always have deductive reasoning to it. So that's where the challenge comes in, is because you're kind of bucking the system or your conditioning, and you're saying, no, I'm going to listen to myself organically. What does that say? What am I feeling that way?
Okay.
So
So
I
go
have one
ahead.
more. I have one more explanation. Your question was why. Okay. We don't quite understand the significance of feelings and emotions. And I was listening to one of your other recordings with is it CJ, and she talks about the chakras, and she had such a profound phrase where feelings bring consciousness to our body. And that's a huge, like, profound phrase that goes with this moon cycle. Because, that's really this interconnectedness where we touch that source or soul, or, where we really experience that is through our feelings. And so when we do that, we're bringing a much deeper, more dimensional consciousness into this physical experience of our body that way. So then
Absolutely.
the other thing that's about, there's so much involved in this moon cycle. I don't know if I'm going to get it all in. Um, but the other thing is, we're really, like, the way consciousness is right now, it makes emotion seem random and insignificant and just a nuisance, and something that we have to control. And where the reality of it is, our emotions are informing. They're very much part of our learning potential. And and when we start to live by feelings, we start to learn this larger aspect of what emotions are and how useful they are. And instead of suppressing them and denying them, you use them as if you would a book or any other kind of informational resource. So in this moon cycle, it gets you to understand, there's a pattern to your emotions, because that pattern of emotions is supporting your growth and the evolution of your consciousness.
So many points there. If we can, I know it's just so many. I mean, one of the big ones that you touched on, which is the title of this new moon cycle, it's the moon's trust. That word trust. In our society, we really aren't raised in a way that would support our ability to trust our feelings, or even express our emotions, depending on whether you're male or female, right? You're kind of conditioned to suppress certain emotions and not express them. And you alluded to what CJ or Shar Young said in previous podcasts that I've recorded with her, but in reading the Conversations with God series by Neil Donald Walsh, I believe he's the author, the message that comes through, one of the big messages, is that God communicates through feeling. But the
Yes.
challenge,
Yes.
which you mentioned, is that if you are living life through feeling, then the challenge is that you can't logically explain it. And it's true.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that in my personal experiences, and I'm sure you have too, where uh, I'll take you as an example. If someone asked you, how did you overcome an autoimmune disease? You would tell them what you basically had this spiritual transformative experience, but logically it doesn't make sense. But
Mm-mm.
it's something that
And
happened. It's a feeling that, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so that whole healing process had to do with me transitioning from deductive reasoning to continually understanding how I was feeling. You
Okay.
know, what
Yeah.
what relationships felt right and productive and healthy compared to what relationships didn't. And I was always going back to, this deductive reasoning and logic wasn't working. It was making me sick. So I just basically started using that all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what the healing process is.
That's awesome. The other thing you mentioned that I do want to highlight again is the importance of working with your feelings and emotions instead of suppressing them. I mean, if you're sad or happy, from my perspective today, which is what I understand the creator of all things views all of its creation, from this neutral, unconditionally loving perspective, means he has no favorites really, that these feelings are available for us to use to help us essentially expand our consciousness. So there might be a time where, depending on what you want to learn and or experience, or a goal you want to achieve, a certain feeling would support you better. And now,
Yes.
if you are comfortable expressing that feeling, not suppressing it, then it's easier for you to work with it. Not, you use the word use, I use the word work with. I'm like, oh, I need to work with this feeling to achieve this end goal. And I can only work with it if I better understand it. And I can't understand it if I'm suppressing it and not spending essentially time with it by expressing it. So that's great that this new moon cycle is going to give us the opportunity to learn more about our emotions and the sources of them, ergo our feelings.
I have one more thing. I always
Yeah.
have one more thing today, don't I?
I love it. If you feel like saying one more thing, go for it.
Okay. So what is really great, we developed this Moon Vibes Planner, so because the patterns of your emotions and feelings follow the cycles of the moon. So when you start to feel sad or you start to feel wonky, which is what we call it, you can open your planner and look at it and say, wow, this is the full moon or the new moon or whatever it is. And you have such a better reference to what is happening with you, with your consciousness, and what those feelings are bringing forth for you to learn. So it gives you a structure.
Absolutely.
Instead of just going through the day complaining to everybody, I feel really stupid, I feel weird or whatever it is, you have a resource to go to and say, wow, okay, this might be why I'm feeling this way,
Yeah. We talked about this before the recording. I called it, you basically have a list of objectives at the start of each new moon cycle, right? And it's like going to class and the teacher says, well, these are the objectives of what we're going to learn in this class. Makes it way easier. And in hindsight, I actually wish I read the objectives when I was in pharmacy school, because I just skipped over that thinking, it's not important. So when I know we have starting July 10th, during that first week, the new moon week, and as well as the first quarter moon week, you've kind of talked a lot already about what this entire new moon cycle is going to be providing us opportunities to become aware of. But can you touch a little bit more on what we will see during this new moon week and then the first quarter moon week?
Yes. I can talk about kind of the last days of this, Mercury's compassion, and then also the first weeks. and it all goes together because we're moving into that receptive impulse. And then the moon is all about pattern. So me personally, I do yoga and I take a walk and then I sit in the sunshine with my tea, and I have all these things I do in the morning. And so it's in the last week, it's like trying to put those together in the right pattern that's most instrumental. And I found myself doing this, not doing yoga, putting on, and then just in the last few days, it's like all of a sudden the pattern's coming to form that's the most instrumental for me right now this year. And so you might find yourself doing that. You might find yourself saying, I kind of need a pattern. Or you might find yourself, well, I'm going to start walking and then, eating breakfast. Or even throughout the rest of the day, you might find a pattern in the way what foods you're eating and that kind of a thing. So the receptive impulse in this moon cycle with patterns and rhythms and emotions and all of that, you're going to start to feel yourself wanting to fall into more of a rhythmic consistency. So that's probably what the first couple weeks are going to be like in this moon cycle, is that kind of slowing down and then seeing yourself, wow, okay. Or you might be setting up, you have a coffee group or you have a group of friends and you say, hey, let's meet every Wednesday, And so then you set up a pattern for that type of, relationships throughout the rest of the year. And that's what's happening within this moon cycle. So the new moon week is all about having ideas and impressions of this. And then the first quarter moon week is very much taking those ideas and concepts and bringing them into your conscious activity, where you find yourself being more active, but you're going to bring those patterns and all that stuff from the first moon week into the second moon week as activities.
Neat. That's super cool. And we didn't mention this, but this entire summer season is going to span 3 new moons.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
yes.
So we have this whole, basically, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the summer season is all about relationship and play. It's all about exactly what summer's all about. How we just kind of romp around and we go camping and we do all kinds of vacations and we just have fun. And that's truly what these moon cycles are about. For us to interact with other people and to, and bring new people into our life too, is what
awesome.
It's about.
Yeah. And one of the other things we like to talk about during the new moon conversations are the chakras that are going to be affected. And so would you mind speaking to the chakra that this moon's trust new moon on July 10th will affect or influence?
Yes, Roland, it's the sacral it's the sacral chakra. And we're just gonna say it. We're gonna put it out there. Before we started recording, Roland and I were discussing how to pronounce this chakra, because we like to say sacral and it's really sacral. So every time we say it now, every time we say it, Roland and I start giggling, and we got our giggling started. So back to what the sacral chakra is all about. And it's very much about the regenerative aspect of your human experience. And if you think about it, cycles are very much that. Like a plant goes through a cycle of being a seed and, sprout, and then it blooms and goes back and it decomposes back into the ground. And so this chakra with the moon's trust is all about that. It's about how we have that same regenerative cycle, and it's all about the reproductive organs. It includes, very much it's below your belly button. And Roland has done a wonderful conversation with the CJ, and I highly recommend listening to her recording of that chakra, because it goes into such great detail. And that chakra is very much about emotions also, tied with that. And last moon cycle is about the root chakra. And so there's this beautiful transition from the root chakra to the sacral chakra where, the root is foundational. And this one is the next chakra where you step out of that home, security, foundational aspects. And it's very much about relationship with others and bringing that into your conscious awareness and
Indeed.
emotionally.
So just a real quick, insight. In recording these conversations with Shaw, she was very adamant that the sacral chakra was her favorite, right? And she really likes it, and the color orange as well. Yeah, she said it was my favorite just because of how much we hold in there, or a lot of our emotional experiences and our emotional awareness and feelings. It's all held in there, and that's what's being expressed. And she says many times when she walks into a room, she's reading people's emotions and using basically their sacral, there we go, their sacral chakras. She has learned to do that, and she loves it. She talked about so many things with that, including when she's performing, say, Reiki energy healing. She always pays attention to where her clients will lay down on, the massage table, and where they place their hands. And many times that would tell her where people are not uncomfortable, or where people are not comfortable and they're trying to protect. And she says so often people will go either on the sacral chakra, or just the solar plexus. And she's always paying attention to that too. But yeah, it's a fascinating conversation. I'll have a link to it with this conversation. If you're watching it on YouTube or listening to it, then you can look for a previous conversation with Shar Young and learn more about the sacral chakra there. But
so we can really look at how the chakra is so related with the moon cycle that we're going through, and how the moon cycle has the learning potential to open that chakra up even wider, even to let that kundalini energy flow free.
Yeah.
So they're totally interconnected.
As is everything and everyone. That's like my favorite word, the interconnectedness of all of consciousness expressed in unique ways. I guess favorite sentence. Who knows? We're right at the end here, and I'm really fascinated by this, this new moon cycle. For many things, you've mentioned the words reflection and awareness. You've mentioned the word trust. That's a big one, and I like that you've been very clear that we're talking about trusting your feelings and the eventual emotions that those feelings are giving you the opportunities to express, and get to know the nature aspect of yourself and the structure of your personality. And this is all starting in like about a week or so, July 10th. So any more information you think is wise for us to know as we prepare to start this new moon cycle, and we're closing off the Mercury's compassion moon cycle?
I think the biggest thing, people will probably be more emotional during this moon cycle. And if you just hold in your awareness that this is the natural part of this year, that, I'm going to be a little more emotional. Okay, what do I need to learn from this? Not going with it and being courageous. And I think the word vulnerable is a really good word for this moon cycle, to be compassionate with yourself and say, okay, I got to trust this. I just got to go with it. And, but what is it really I'm supposed to learn from it is the big thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. All right. and that's it. Learn something as you always do, particularly about feelings and emotions with this moon cycle. And Wendy talked about her, Me, We, and Us, the Moon Vibes Planner. Please get a copy of this, meweandus.org. And you asked for this video early, so we're putting it out early. You now
Well,
know
and
how to
don't you
say
think,
sacro.
yeah, and don't you think we're preparing people for like the new moon? You know, it might be a little emotional, and that's what the new moon's going to be about. So now you're ready.
You're ready.
We did our
Yeah,
part.
we did. We did our part, and now it's up to you. But yeah, no, as always, Wendy, thank you for taking the time to come on and essentially just share your experiences and your knowledge about the moon and its effects on us all. And for anyone who is new, again, visit mewayandus.org. I'll have links to it. And you can connect with me at Roland@achenjang.com. And as you listen to this, I invite you to create an amazing day.
Thank you, Roland.